I mean, don't you think that ad revenue-only business models are actually getting weaker, especially given the current climate?
Well, I'm a big believer in subscription because we started with that, and we were very profitable business when we started with subscription. And the market was telling us, forget about revenues and profitability, it's all about the growth. That's what the thinking was in 2006 and 2007. Everyone was focusing on revenues only and starving off growth. We're like, well, you're doing the wrong thing, because the future value expectations of those businesses will be that UMV, unique monthly visitors, will mean that your business is worth a few $100 million. And now we're back to the fundamentals. So I do believe that diversification of revenue streams is key. Microtransactions is something that actually a lot of businesses like, SciWorld and Second World, even Facebook, $40 million of revenues in virtual gift last year alone. Habbo Hotel have proven that there are ways of monetizing, and I think that it's absolutely key right now in the current environment to diversify. Saying that, content is key still, and I think that once we'll survive the storm, those that will have managed to collaborate all of this content in a clever manner, especially when it comes to the mobile technologies, will do well in the advertising going forward.
There's a good question here. What incentives can user-written guides offer to improve the quality? I'm assuming this is of user-generated content. Dermot from Lonely Planet, it seems quite a good one for you.
I think the approach that we're certainly thinking about is one of giving people kudos for writing good content and for generating good content. So we've just launched a platform to integrate blogs onto the Lonely Planet website, for example. But we're handpicking those bloggers with whom we work in order to get people who we think are really good. So this is an example of taking our expertise and level of authority and then sort of delegating that out to a selection of people. And so I think that the same is true of broader user-generated content as well, is that you want people to have the opportunity to become recognized as an authority or an expert in an area in which they work and essentially get kudos points to it. Potentially down the path there's a revenue share opportunity as well, where you can say we'll split revenues with you as well if you write us good content. But otherwise, you just get the morass, and I don't think that's really good for anybody.
Relevancy seems to be the key word, but it's marrying that with the individual preferences, but they do actually change over time. I mean, how do you kind of reach that kind of conflicts if you're a content provider?
I think this is where the social aspect comes in. You come to a site with a lot of content, but you immediately see, okay, out of this mass of content, this is what your Facebook friends like, this bar in Barcelona, this is what your Wayne friends like, this is what your MySpace friends like. Immediately out of the massive content points you towards your right recommendations and choices that both improves lead generation, and also as your social graph grows older with you, maybe their preferences change the same way as your preferences change. So I was a backpacker with 20, I'm now a maybe flash packer, whatever you want to call it. But I think it grows with the social aspect.
Okay, and just a kind of a follow-up to that, I mean, what is the next disruptive wave of user-generated content, and who is likely to provide it?
What do you mean?
So if we're saying that user-generated content originally was about user reviews, people contributing about their own trips, is there going to be a next wave, another kind of a UGC 2.0, can we call it that? Something like that? What do we expect to be the next kind of developments in UGC?
I think there's a real role to play for spikier, more opinionated comments about, sort of personality-led writing almost, that sort of says, I really hated this place, or I really like this place. I think that Virgin letter is quite an interesting example of that, where someone was so opinionated, they got massive pickup, and that really stood out as a good piece of content. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But and I think the people who find a way to bring those two things together are going to be successful, and that's going to be different from what we've got today.
Okay.
I think we'll see kind of here the differentiation between what is user-generated content and what is professional content or journalist content, because these lines start to blur. If a blogger wears a Lonely Planet badge, is he now user-generated content, or is he professional editorial content? So I think it just becomes a question of content quality in general. I think it's a kind of artificial distinction between.
Okay, so we had another question via SMS, and it kind of goes to your point that you made about revenue share with some of your bloggers, but I mean, I'd be interested to hear from the rest of you. How much is a good community user worth?
$500 million. I mean, it's a $1 million question. I think it really depends, first of all, on how engaged the community really is. Is there frequency in the usage? Is it 2-3 times a month, or is it 2 or 3 times a day? And I think that so the engagement is by far, to me, the most important thing, because even if there's not much user-generated content coming out of that, there's going to be a huge amount of room for maneuver, in getting something out of that community. But I think the value of a community is definitely in the engagement and in the value of the content that they are contributing. If you think that on Twitter, I'm sure you at least have 100,000 users on Twitter that have said, I'm currently enjoying, my snowboarding weekend in Chamonix. That is perhaps extremely valuable for a company in a long run that want to offer 50% of ski jacket for all of the people that actually have said that they are enjoying snowboarding. It means that they're potentially interesting in that sort of discount going forward. So the level of data that they're accumulating is not for nothing. They're going to start monetizing it in some ways in the future. But right now, it's all about getting that mass usage and the mass content.
Yeah. Jan, we've said before, you're reasonably new to this game. I mean, what's your opinion here?
I think it's all about the revenues of the company, of course, and it doesn't matter how many users they have. We're not a community. We have a review site. We don't have users on our portal, so I'm not sure what your community is worth. I think a lot, but
don't be so sure.
You have to wait a year or two.
Okay. Should travel companies and organisations actually give up trying to generate their own methods of marrying UGC with their customer base and just use existing social networks, like you said, Jerome, with like Twitter? Because that's arguably where the interesting conversations are taking place and where individual social travel guides are being built anyway.
So is that an infinite question saying, should you build your own community or should you just partner with others?
In short, yes.
I think that it's extremely challenging, again, for big companies to start a community from scratch. They're going to be able to knock something up very quickly because they're going to have the funds to do it. But is there a brand affinity, to be part of a community of a big corporation company? Very unlikely. So I think that you should definitely, instead of reinventing the wheel, is use the tools available to you out there and get the content. Building a community is different. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them.
I think we're still in the process of finding out what actually works. For example, Twitter, apparently 140 character text message size is a medium that works. It could be anybody else but Twitter, but in the future you should actually try to incorporate this medium of 140 characters into your communities, into your sites. If it's via Twitter or if you build it yourself, that's a different question, but we're still in the process of discovering what media work on the web.